Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Matt here from YoVideogames. I'm back again with another review, maybe one that's a little more in the wheelhouse of this channel and the other channels. But yeah, we're to talk about Fatal Fury City of the Wolves today, and I'm going to give my final thoughts on the game now that it's been out, now that it's been online, and I've played online, and I've checked out the single-player mode and everything that's on offer, and I'm going to try to give you a short and sweet sort of breakdown on whether or not this is actually a game for you or not for you. So if you're a fighting game player and you're kind of really in depth into the mechanics, you're really into maybe like classic SNK games, this is probably a no-brainer for you. This game is a very much, your mileage may vary as far as where you're kind of coming from in the industry, and you're going to probably hear this a lot throughout, well, I don't know how long this review will be, maybe short, but this is an SNK game for better or worse, like mostly for better. I don't really say for worse. We'll get to that part, but this is pretty much an SNK game through and through. The heart and soul of it is. And okay, so the first thing we should just go right into here is sort of like okay, what does it have for story mode? Because obviously NRS raised the bar with MK9, and even Capcom was playing catch up for a very long time. It still kind of is, and they had their own sort of like really interesting solution. And City of the Wolves has probably the most in-depth story mode single-player content for any SNK game to date. However, that also isn't saying much. What it does have is ache into something like the map Conquest in the console version of Soul Calibur 2, which is actually pretty good. It's actually pretty fun. It's breezy. You have a map. You select points on a map. You have a quasi leveling system. As you level up, you'll unlock more areas on the map, which more fights, which are basically variations of it. Well, one-on-one matches. Sometimes it'll be fight a bunch of things in a row. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's going to feel real familiar to those who dabbled in the single-player content of Soul Calibur 2, and that's pretty much a good thing. But it isn't necessarily a over-the-top thing, where okay, you're getting a really highly polished cinematic story like an NRS game, and you're not getting some weird sort of Yakuza light version of wandering around in a 3D space like in Street Fighter 6. You are getting something that's kind of like, well, this would have been pretty awesome or considered top of the line 20 years ago. For as now, it's like it's a good start, but it may not really be enough for those who are looking for a more meatier, more cinematic sort of single-player mode. Of course, there's arcade as well, and you get arcade mode, and you get arcade endings. But yeah, like as far as the story goes, it does try to faithfully follow up after Gauro, Mark of the Wolves, again from 20 years ago, which kind of might be sort of an Achilles heel for the game a bit, where this is a game that's so much for the fans, but for people coming into it, it's going to be a little okay. Like there's definitely story and characters here, and they're going to be talking about and referencing things that happened in the past that if you're not really a Fatal Fury person, you might be a little lost. So again, it's an SNK game all the way through, for better and worse. And so let's just dive right into the gameplay here for the rest of this, and we'll talk about the graphics and music a little after. But this game does feel like, from a gameplay standpoint, they were really trying to go after people who might be, sometimes we call them 09ers, people who started playing around Street Fighter 4, or maybe people who just started playing games anywhere in the last 15 years. So this game does feel like it's going after that crowd. I think one of the things that maybe some people feel a little intimidated by when it comes to King of Fighters is the fact that it's 3v3. You have to pick 3 characters, which makes you feel like you have to learn 3 characters. And Fatal Fury City of the Wolves is a 1-versus-1 fighting game. It's very much in the same vein how Mark of the Wolves was sort of a direct competition to Third Strike. This is very much a sort of competition, or if anything, sort of a complement to Street Fighter 6. If you're familiar with Street Fighter 6, and there's probably a lot of you who are, this is actually a sort of great jumping in point because it uses similar mechanics and features. The big one being the Rev mode. So Rev mode, it kind of functions a lot like Drive Impact. You have this sort of meter that can burn out, and when you're burned out, you lose the ability to do certain things. But when you have Rev meter, you can do EX moves. You can link EX to EX. and it's really fun, and it's kind of pretty open-ended for the most part, but you do have to be really fast with your inputs and motions. There is smart controls, as they call it, which is exactly the same as modern controls. Okay, not exactly the same, but it functions on a similar wavelength. Smart controls try to do something different from modern, where in modern controls in Street Fighter 6, you held down R2 and then pressed, one of 3 face buttons to do auto combos. Whereas in City of the Wolves, you don't actually have to hold down a button to do auto combos. Auto combos will automatically go if you're within the proper range of hitting a person on that first hit. So again, smart controls, they kind of try to let you do things where it'll just take over the auto combo for you. You don't have to worry about holding a button down or not holding a button down. So again, having a sort of simplified control scheme for newcomers, for people who are brand new and don't have a fight stick or don't have a hitbox or something, this is pretty great. It's actually pretty cool for those who are kind of new and just testing the waters for the first time. Are the smart controls going to be a competitive alternative or whatever? No, probably not. Certain things, like for certain characters I've tried around with the smart controls, you actually lose some of their core special moves, and that is also similar true for modern and Street Fighter, where say playing M. Bison on modern controls and you actually don't have access to certain moves of his. B-Gen, it's the same way here. You just don't have access to her counter. So it's that you are going to be losing abilities to do things if you go with the simplified control scheme, but it's probably something that if you're using it, you're probably not too worried about it anyways. But anyways, getting back into the Rev mode, it works just like Drive Impact in Street Fighter 6. Whereas in Street Fighter 6, you have a bar that drains. Here, it is a bar that goes up from 0 to 100% in the corner. A rev gauge, looks like a gauge on a car. And once you burn out, then you lose the ability to do EXs and stuff. The big difference here is that in Street Fighter 6, with the Drive Impact, when you press the buttons, you take a little bit of meter to do a Drive Impact or Drive Rush. Here, you choose where on your life bar you want to be able to do those, because you actually don't get penalized for doing armored moves, your Drive Impact moves, to use Street Fighter 6 terminology. To do rev moves or Drive Impact moves, you can do as much as you want as long as you're within what's called SPG meter. And you choose before every fight where you want that to be. So you choose 1/3 of your health, either the first third, middle third, or last third of your health will grant you access to doing basically Drive Impacts. And you can do as much as you want in them. And they function the same way. They're heavily armored. It takes a lot. You can't get grabbed out of it. It all functions the same. But the nice thing here is in Fatal Fury, you can actually do air Drive Impacts, for lack of a better term. You can be jumping in and do a different one while you're in the air, which Street Fighter 6 don't have that. So that's kind of nice here too. There are a lot of other mechanics, and I don't really want to go into it too hard or heavy, because I feel like I'm just being confusing already, just trying to think about the casual perspective here. But yeah, if you're really into fighting games, you probably already know if you want this game or not. So just from a sort of casual, coming in, I like fighting games. I play a little bit of fighting games. I don't play fighting games. It's a little easier to grasp than King of Fighters, because again, you only have to choose one character. The Drive Impact system works just like Street Fighter 6, only this time you choose where you want to get your unlimited uses of it, whether in the first, middle, or last third. You also, you have another thing called Rev Block. So there's an extra button on the game, because normally King of Fighters and Fatal Fury, they're 4-button fighters. Light kicks, heavy kick, light kick, heavy kick, light punch, heavy punch. There's a Rev button here, and what it is it's a block button. So you have this weird block button that, as long as you're blocking, it kind of slowly builds up your rev gauge, and when you block a move, it builds up even more. What this button does is it lets you not worry about where a character is when they're attacking, because that's kind of a thing a lot of probably newer players probably have frustrations with, where someone does what's called a mix-up or an overhead or sweeps when you think they're going to hit high, and you have to be blocking in a certain position to block that. This game has a block button, for lack of a better term, called the Rev button, and you just hold this button down and it'll block no matter what anyone's throwing at you. And now it's going to burn up your rev gauge. So again, once you're burned out, you can't use the block button for that time that you're getting your rev meter back. But hey, it's kind of like a really cool feature. At first, I thought, oh, I don't know if I'll be using this much. I'm pretty okay on blocking. But then you realize that you have, okay, this is actually really cool, because now if someone's really good at mixing up or jumping over me or whatever, I can kind of rely on this, so I don't have to worry too much about where do I press, which way do I block, when I have this button that just sort of like does it for me. The game also has Just Defense and Hyper Defense. I won't go into Hyper Defense here, but Just Defense are really fun, where you just tap back to block at the exact moment of impact. These function pretty similar to the way they did in Samurai Showdown. But yeah, like there's a lot to go over here. And again, the big feature and draw of this is that this game is a kind of a juiced up Street Fighter 6, where if you know how to use the rev meter, which again lets you do the EX versions of things, and you can combine the EX version of things and then link, 3 EX moves into a super move, you're going to see like really crazy juiced up combos that are mostly just about, okay, how fast can I execute this? And they're really fun to see, like in real time or just do. Now, there are combo trials in the game for single player for you to practice on, but they are sort of knuckle destroying hard, I almost feel like. You learn a couple good bread and butter ones, and you're good to go for the most part at low and mid tier. But yeah, like some of the combo trials that they want you to do in the game are basically, I feel, made to break people's fingers. So don't worry if you feel like it's a little too intense. They're really for showing off. They're not really for necessarily practical use online. So I wouldn't worry too much about that when you dive into it. But all that being said, as far as like the rest of the game goes, like, yeah, it's a cast of mostly classic Fatal Fury characters and, a couple really bizarre real world tie-ins. But the one thing that's kind of nice, though, is that when you do buy this game, you are getting the first full season of DLC characters for free, which is actually pretty awesome. So if you're, say, a Street Fighter person by nature, Ken and Chun-Li are coming, in the game later, pretty soon within the first year, and you don't have to worry about paying for them extra because they're covered as far as the purchase of the initial version of the game. So that's pretty awesome there. But again, this is all your mileage may vary. Now, as far as, say, how noob or casual friendly in this game, that's going to kind of depend on how long the casuals want to stick around online. I was finding within the release date, I was finding pretty decent enough matches with people around my rank in ranked matches. But that being said, it's functional, and I still like it more than the Arc System lobbies, which nobody's a fan of anymore. But it is the most basic, bare bones online UI interface setup you can possibly imagine. So if you were hoping for something like the Battle Hub or something like that, no. Yeah, it's functional, but oh man, it's very basic. But again, your mileage may vary on how much you care. Most people, I don't think, will care about anything like that. So it's fine. Just know that it's another one of those things where you have to pick your character and pick your stage before you go online and search, and then it kind of just decides of the two which stage you're going to get. So I wish you could pick your character as you sync up to someone, but I guess the bridge too far for fighting games nowadays. But anyways, yeah, like this is a much easier jumping in point than, say, King of Fighters. However, to be 100% honest, because this is a game that has all kinds of fancy combos and fancy rushdown and stuff, this is not necessarily the most user-friendly game from SNK, like Samurai Showdown, which is all about big hits, big damage, big slow swings. Samurai Showdown is like the caveman fighting game, but not that there isn't sauce in that game, there is, but yeah, this game is still not as easy to jump into as say Samurai Showdown was. And if in comparison, well, how easy is it compared to Street Fighter 6? This is a more technical fighting game. This is an SNK game. This is an SNK game with crazy SNK timing, crazy SNK mechanics. The only thing that's nice here is they got rid of pretzel motion, so doing any of the supers is just double fireball motions forward or back. That's it. So that is one quality of life I'm actually happy to see here. But again, to reiterate, to emphasize, if you're unfamiliar with the way SNK games function and flow and how much mechanics are buried in any given match, yeah, you'll find out real quick if you find an SNK Pro online. So, all that being said, jumping into graphics, it uses a sort of comic shaded look to it with a lot of halftones. It has a very Marvel vs. Capcom 3 look to the character designs, and I think it's really good. It's one of the better looking SNK games that they've made since their return. Again, the main characters pop. However, the backgrounds do kind of suffer a little bit because of it, but almost in a good way, because the faded, muted colors of the backgrounds tend to make sure that you can see and have good clarity of what's going on in the characters fighting each other in the front of the screen. That being said, I probably should mention there is one stage that has the classic Fatal Fury lane shifting, from 30 years ago, because all of you probably remember that. But it's goofy and it's fun. It's only in one stage and it's not on ranked, I don't believe. It's fun if you ever want to dabble in it. But yeah, the graphics are good, but under a little bit of scrutiny, you can kind of see they definitely downplayed the backgrounds a little bit to make the main characters pop a little more. And yeah, it's an SNK game, so there's good keyframes, but there's good keyframes, and there's not a ton of in between sometimes. And as far as the music goes, it goes for generally a big band jazz aesthetic, and I think it works brilliantly. Some of the stages are absolute bops. The other thing too is that the game has a jukebox mode, which I feel is worth pointing out, and it has a ton of old SNK games you can pull from, even some random ones like Fatal Fury Wild Ambition. And yeah, it's really fun, and it's what a standard. I don't know who started it. Maybe Tekken 7 started this, but having a jukebox is pretty fantastic, because you find a song you're just kind of bored with or don't like, go dig into this library of SNK music and find whatever track you want to replace it with. So jukebox mode, I gotta give a shout out to that. What a wonderful idea. But I do think the music internally made for this game is actually pretty good too. So yeah, like overall as a package, I think it's a fighting game aficionados game. I think it's much easier for people who are only familiar with, say, Street Fighter and maybe Mortal Kombat or maybe a Tekken. Is this easy enough for them to jump into? I think they'll have a much easier time jumping into Fatal Fury, City of the Wolves than they would in a King of Fighters, because again, they don't have to sit there and look at what 3 characters do I want to pick. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So keeping it one-on-one, I think, keeps it a little more easier to grasp, and it lets people get a little further into the mechanics a little quicker. However, that being said, it in no way did it abandon the complexity that comes in intrinsically with most SNK fighting games. And if you're an unlucky soul who happens to face an SNK veteran online, you will die very quickly. You will have no idea how or why or what just happened. This is welcome to the arcade. You're going to learn today rules online. So hopefully the ranked holds up, as far as putting the right people in the right places. But yeah, if you were looking for something that's a little bit more of a simplified, anyone can kind of jump in and learn this stuff, this is not easy to master. This is intermediate to, a little on the higher end to master. So, because the big thing every fighting game wants is easy to learn, hard to master. This game is intermediate to learn, very hard to master, as is most SNK games. Actually, most SNK games are a little on the hard to learn, hard to learn, near impossible to master. So this one's a little easier, but if this was like your first fighting game, maybe not. All that being said, as far as graphics, music, story, gameplay, bringing it all together, what would I rate it? I would say it's a quality game, and it's hard to really quantify that. I've played so many bad fighting games in my time on this earth, during the Mortal Kombat clone phase, and just sort of like before the fighting games had their big crash out. So this is a genuinely quality, experience. It's an 8 out of 10. It's not a slam dunk. I don't know that this is necessarily going to be the game to break SNK into the mainstream. It's still a very stylized, I love this style myself personally. I love the way this game looks. I love the way this game looks more than Street Fighter 6, but it's an extremely anime-looking game. Not an anime fighter, but a very animated Japanese anime-looking video game, fighting game that is not the easiest thing in the sun to learn. but definitely more manageable than past entries have been. So again, also not the big giant money sink presentation in the story mode or the single player content, just sort of like, oh well, this would have been pretty great 20 years ago kind of stuff, but still good now. So about a good 8 out of 10. A lot of that, and again, you get the full DLC of season 1 for free with the purchase of the game. So they're definitely giving you a lot of characters to play around with here. So yeah, that's my general thoughts on City Wolves. I've always been kind of happy with what I've played of the game throughout all the preview events and stuff, and it holds up on release as well. But you also kind of realize too, at the end of the day, it's an SNK game, and it's gonna be way more than an 8 for SNK fans. If you love SNK, I don't even know why you're watching this review. You already know you love this game. For those who are brand new to the scene, yeah. It's a decent jumping in point, and I think you can still have some fun, but just know that there are killers out there. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you on the channel later, dudes.